At Maple Avenue Mall, afternoon sunlight spilled like gold across polished marble, turning everything it touched into something glowing, expensive, and unreal. Inside the boutique, where velvet gowns whispered from silver hangers and perfume curled in the air like a secret, 16-year-old Sophia Carter stepped over the threshold with eyes full of light. She had dreamed of this moment, shopping alone, independent, for her father's annual charity gala. No staff shadowing her. No chauffeur outside. Just her thoughts, and the quiet thrill of choosing her own dress. She moved with grace, even if she didn't fully realize it. Hair in a tidy bun, her backpack modest, her sneakers soft against the stone. She touched the fabric of a deep green gown, and her fingertips tingled. Her father, Ethan Carter, had always said she had an eye for detail. He was right. But across the boutique stood Brenda Whitmore. Wrapped in a designer coat, sharp like a blade, Brenda didn't see potential or dignity or joy when she looked at Sophia. She saw intrusion. Her gaze narrowed as Sophia moved. Her lips tightened like she'd bitten into something sour. Brenda didn't believe this world was made for everyone, it was made for her. And in her mind, girls like Sophia didn't belong in it. Sophia picked up the emerald gown and held it to her frame. In her mind's eye, she was already at the gala, the beads catching the light as she spun in laughter with her father, maybe even making a speech this year. She didn't hear Brenda's murmurs or see the way two nearby customers shifted, responding to her whispers. Brenda followed. At first, it was just subtle, the click of expensive heels, the swish of her coat. Then came the comments, thinly veiled. "She's probably just here for selfies," Brenda muttered to another woman. "You know how they are." Sophia, in the fitting room now, hadn't heard any of it. She only saw herself in the mirror, glowing. But when she stepped out, the energy had changed. The boutique, so serene moments before, now vibrated with something colder. Brenda stood near the mirrors, arms crossed, lips curled into a false smile. "That's a beautiful dress," she said, voice like syrup over glass. Sophia smiled, polite. "Thank you. I think it's perfect for my father's event." Then came the dagger. "Are you sure you're in the right store?" Sophia's smile didn't falter long. "I'm exactly where I need to be." She turned, but Brenda followed, louder now. "This store isn't exactly budget-friendly. Maybe you should try somewhere more affordable." The words echoed too easily off the boutique's marble walls. Sophia stopped. Turned. "I'll let my purchases speak for themselves," she said, steady, proud. But Brenda was just getting started. She marched to the counter where Olivia Summers stood behind the register, eyes wide and nervous. Brenda leaned in like she owned the place. "I saw her acting suspicious. You should check her bag. I wouldn't be surprised if something's already missing." Olivia froze. She was young. New. And afraid. Sophia's heart sank as Olivia approached, hesitant. "Mrs. Whitmore has concerns. Would you mind showing us your bag?" Sophia blinked. Humiliation burned up her spine, but her voice stayed even. "I haven't done anything wrong. But if it'll end this nonsense, go ahead." She handed over the bag. Olivia's hands trembled as she searched. Wallet. Lip gloss. School schedule. Nothing else. "There's nothing here," Olivia whispered. But Brenda wasn't done. "Check again," she barked. People like her hide things. Now the room had fully shifted. Customers who had pretended not to notice were watching. Some with sympathy. Some with shame. But Brenda pushed on. "You're only doing this because of the color of my skin," Sophia said, loud and clear. "You should be ashamed." Gasps. A ripple of tension across the room like a dropped glass. Sophia pulled out her phone. Her hands didn't shake this time. "Dad," she said calmly. "I need you to come to the boutique. There's a situation here. The calm before the storm had ended. And the storm was about to walk through the door. The boutique had never been quieter. The kind of silence that comes after something unthinkable is said aloud. Every face, every breath, was suspended in the heavy air. Sophia stood still, her phone now tucked neatly back into her bag, her posture straight, her expression unreadable. Brenda scoffed theatrically, shaking her head as if Sophia's calm had somehow offended her further. Probably calling her boyfriend, she muttered loudly to another customer, her voice drenched in condescension. That's what they do, always someone else's fault. Never their own. The woman she spoke to didn't respond. She stepped slightly away, discomfort etched across her face. Even those who might have quietly sided with Brenda before were now uneasy. Something had changed. Brenda didn't seem righteous anymore, she seemed unhinged. Behind the counter, Olivia Summers stood frozen, pale, her fingers gripping the edge of the display like a lifeline. Her eyes flicked from Sophia to the door and back again, a silent prayer hiding behind her trembling lashes. She was already regretting every choice that had led to this moment. And then, outside, the low, unmistakable purr of a luxury engine. It rolled through the boutique like a warning. The sleek black SUV pulled up with measured confidence, its tinted windows casting long, ominous reflections across the boutique's gleaming glass. The engine cut off, and the sound alone sent ripples through the room. A suited man emerged first. Tall. Muscular. Expressionless. He didn't say a word as he surveyed the boutique. He didn't need to. Then came Ethan Carter. The door opened again with a soft chime, but nothing about the moment felt gentle. Ethan stepped into the store like a shadow falling across a chessboard, intentional, quiet, devastating. He was wearing a tailored navy blue suit, crisp and calm, his tie dark and understated, but it was the way he moved that silenced the room. Every step carried gravity. Authority. The kind that didn't need to shout to be obeyed. Brenda's face twisted in confusion. "Who is that?" she hissed to Olivia, who couldn't speak. Her lips parted but no sound came. She didn't have to answer. The look on her face said it all. "That's Ethan Carter," one customer whispered with awe. The Ethan Carter. Ethan's eyes swept the boutique once. Customers, staff, dress racks. But when he saw Sophia, standing tall in her emerald gown, unshaken, his expression softened just slightly. He walked directly to her. "Are you okay?" he asked gently, his voice lower than usual, meant for her and no one else. Sophia nodded. "I'm fine, Dad." He gave the faintest nod. Then he turned. "What's going on here?" The question was simple, but no one missed the warning under the surface. Brenda sprang forward, fake concern dripping from her tone. "I'm so glad you're here," she gushed. "This girl has been acting suspicious. I was only trying to protect the store's reputation." Ethan didn't even blink. His eyes moved to Olivia. "Is that true?" Olivia stammered. "And no, Mr. Carter. We checked her bag. There was nothing." Brenda flushed red. Her voice sharpened. "That doesn't mean she wasn't planning to steal something. You don't understand, people like her." Ethan's head turned sharply. "People like her," he repeated, the words like ice slicing the air. Brenda's mouth opened, then closed. "She doesn't fit the profile," she finally choked out, her voice cracking. "She doesn't belong here." Now the boutique itself seemed to recoil. Every mannequin looked like it might turn its head. Every customer now watched, spellbound. Ethan stepped forward. Not fast. Just enough. "This girl," he said, voice smooth but heavy, "is my daughter." The sound of collective gasps rose like a wave crashing against the boutique walls. Brenda stumbled back, as if slapped. Sophia didn't move. She didn't gloat. She didn't have to. The truth had done it for her. Brenda looked around, seeking rescue, an ally, an excuse, a lifeline. But there was none. And Ethan wasn't finished. He turned to Olivia now. "And you," he said evenly. "You allowed this to happen. You didn't ask questions. You didn't seek facts. You let someone's baseless prejudice humiliate a customer." "I didn't know who she was," Olivia whispered. I was afraid." Ethan nodded, slowly. "And fear," he said, "is not an excuse. Especially when it leads to injustice." Brenda took one final step forward, her voice now desperate, cracking at the edges. "I thought I was doing the right thing. You thought wrong." The words landed like a gavel. "And now," Ethan said, turning fully toward her, "you will face the consequences." Brenda Whitmore had never been humbled like this before, not by a man, not by a crowd, and certainly not by the girl she had tried to shame into silence. Her lips moved, grasping for a defense, but her words came too late. The entire room had already passed judgment, and Ethan Carter's presence made it impossible to hide behind old excuses. "You are hereby banned from this store," Ethan said clearly, his voice cutting through the air like a blade honed on justice. "And from every other boutique I own. You are no longer welcome in any establishment that carries my name." The words hit Brenda like a freight train. Gasps again echoed from the bystanders, but this time they were gasps of affirmation. Several customers nodded subtly. One man leaned against a mirrored column, arms crossed, watching her with something close to disdain. Brenda's mouth parted. Her face flushed from ivory to scarlet. "You can't be serious," she whispered, her voice small for the first time. "You can't, I didn't even know who she was." "You didn't have to know," Ethan replied calmly, unbothered by her unraveling. "You just had to be decent. That's all. And you failed." Brenda stumbled backward. She glanced to Olivia for support, but the boutique manager looked firmly at the floor. There was no one left to rescue her now. Her heels clicked unevenly as she turned, moving hastily toward the glass doors. Each step rang louder in the silence, and when she reached the threshold, she paused, casting one last, pitiful look back toward the room. But this time, not a soul met her gaze. And that silence, the heavy, damning silence of a crowd that no longer respected her, was louder than any protest she could have made. With a final shove, she flung the door open and disappeared into the street, the soft chime of the bell ringing in the aftermath like a sentence being served. Inside, no one spoke. It was Ethan who broke the silence. He turned to Olivia, who now stood frozen behind the counter, pale and visibly shaken. "I don't expect perfection," Ethan said, his voice now low, almost gentle but still sharp. "But I do expect courage. You had a choice. You could have done the right thing. But instead, you tried to stay neutral." I was afraid of making a mistake," Olivia stammered. Ethan nodded. "And that fear turned into someone else's humiliation." Sophia stood just behind her father now, quiet and composed. She hadn't said much since his arrival, but her silence wasn't weakness. It was power. A quiet refusal to give her dignity away. Ethan looked at her, pride radiating from his expression. And then he turned back to the staff. "This is not just a boutique. It's a reflection of our values. The way you treat people here says everything about who we are. If you ever find yourself choosing between a loud voice and a quiet truth, choose the truth. Every time." The staff, shaken, nodded in agreement. Some of them looked as if they might cry. A few customers gave light applause, hesitant but sincere. Sophia finally spoke. "I don't want special treatment," she said. "I just want to be treated like a human being." Ethan looked at her, really looked at her. "And that," he said firmly, "is exactly what you deserve." Together, father and daughter turned toward the back of the boutique. But just as they began to walk, a voice spoke from the crowd. "Miss Carter." It was the older woman Brenda had tried to confide in earlier. She stepped forward now, soft and unsure. I just want to say. I saw what happened. And I'm sorry I didn't speak up sooner. You showed more grace than I ever could have. Sophia met her eyes and offered a gentle, forgiving smile. Thank you. It means a lot. And with that, she and her father disappeared through the velvet curtain that led to the boutique's back office. The storm had passed. But the lessons would linger like perfume in the air. Behind the velvet curtain, the atmosphere changed instantly. The boutique's tension fell away, replaced by the soft hush of carpeted halls and discreet lighting meant only for staff and executives. Sophia exhaled for the first time in what felt like hours. Her shoulders, stiff from holding so much in, finally dropped a little. Ethan closed the door behind them, the sound deliberate but gentle. He turned to his daughter, resting his hand lightly on her back. You sure you're okay? He asked again, softer this time, no longer the CEO but just her father. Sophia nodded, then shook her head. I think I will be, she admitted honestly. It's not the first time something like this has happened, Dad. Just the worst. Ethan's jaw flexed slightly, the muscles tightening as he tried to hold in the storm behind his composed face. It shouldn't have happened at all. Sophia smiled faintly, walking toward a sleek leather bench against the far wall and sitting down. I know. But, if it had to happen somewhere, I'm glad it happened here. Ethan raised an eyebrow. You are? Yeah. She looked up at him, a mixture of wisdom and weariness in her young eyes. Because now they all saw it. Everyone. No one can pretend they didn't. He sat beside her, his hand still on her shoulder. You shouldn't have had to prove yourself to people who already made up their minds. I wasn't trying to prove anything. Her voice was steady. I just didn't want to be afraid. That hit Ethan harder than he expected. He looked at her not as the man who owned the boutique chain, not even as the protector who had just shut down a racist tirade, but as a father, wondering what kind of world he was handing to his daughter. You did more than that, he said after a long pause. You gave them a lesson they won't forget. You reminded them what real strength looks like. Sophia leaned her head against his shoulder, just for a moment, the kind of closeness they hadn't shared since she was a little girl. You always said dignity isn't something someone can take from you, she murmured. You either give it away or you hold on to it, he finished with her, the familiar phrase grounding them both. Outside, the boutique buzzed again. Quiet voices, low apologies, employees double-checking the racks as if unsure how to return to normalcy. Olivia had disappeared into the break room in tears, and a few customers lingered awkwardly, debating whether to stay or leave after witnessing such a public undoing of one of their own. But in the office, the Carters sat in stillness. Do you want me to shut the store down for today? Ethan asked gently. Sophia shook her head. No. Let them work. Let them feel what it means to move forward with better eyes. He studied her again, this time not as a child he needed to protect, but as a woman growing into something unstoppable. You want to stay and shop? He asked with a half-smile. Sophia's lips twitched. Actually, yeah. I still need a dress. Ethan chuckled, the sound low and comforting. Then we'll do it. Together this time. The two rose from the bench and re-entered the main boutique. Heads turned instantly, but not with judgment. This time, the stares carried something new. Respect. Humility. Maybe even remorse. Sophia walked first. Head high. Stepped sure. When she returned to the same green gown, still draped gently over the fitting room door, she paused, then took it in her arms like something sacred. She didn't need another option. She had already chosen her armor. The same woman who had whispered apologies earlier now stepped toward her again, hesitant. That dress, she said quietly, was made for you. Sophia smiled at her, warm but clear. Thank you. I think so too. Then she stepped back into the dressing room. As she disappeared behind the curtain, the boutique seemed to breathe again. This time, through her presence, not despite it. Back inside the fitting room, Sophia took a slow breath as she faced the mirror. The emerald gown still shimmered like it had been waiting for her all along. But this time, it didn't just feel beautiful. It felt earned. Not because she needed to prove anything, but because she had survived something. Her fingers moved steadily over the fabric as she slipped it back on. There was no trembling now, no hesitation. The beads caught the soft boutique lighting, casting a mosaic of light on the mirror's edge. It no longer felt like just a dress for a gala. It felt like a statement, a quiet, radiant refusal to let anyone diminish her worth. Outside, Ethan waited patiently, hands folded in front of him as several staff members gathered, still shaken. Olivia Summers had returned from the break room, her face blotchy but composed. She approached Ethan cautiously. "Mr. Carter," she began, voice thick with apology. He held up a hand, not to silence her, but to redirect her. "I'm not here to fire anyone," he said gently. "I'm here to make sure what happened today doesn't happen again." "I know I messed up," Olivia admitted, eyes wet. I didn't think. I was afraid of upsetting the wrong person." And in the process, Ethan replied evenly, "You upset the right one." A few of the employees behind her bowed their heads, visibly affected by the clarity of his words. "I understand if you want to replace me," Olivia added. "I wouldn't blame you." Ethan looked at her for a long beat. Then he said, "Do you want to be better?" "Yes," she answered immediately. "Then I don't want your resignation. I want your growth." The words seemed to sink into her skin like a second chance, and Olivia nodded slowly, her voice shaking. "I promise, I'll never let something like that happen again." Just then, the dressing room curtain pulled back. Sophia stepped out, every eye in the boutique turning to her. The emerald gown framed her perfectly, elegant but powerful. She stood tall, chin slightly raised, but with a softness in her gaze that made the room feel warmer. The customers, once unsure of what to do or say, now watched in silence, as if witnessing something bigger than a shopping trip. Ethan smiled, his voice quiet but rich with emotion. "You look beautiful, sweetheart." Sophia smiled back, her expression calm and glowing. "I feel like me." From the far end of the store, the older woman from before took a cautious step closer. "Excuse me," she said gently, then looked at Ethan. "Sir, may I say something?" Ethan gestured for her to continue. "I've been shopping here for years," she said, her voice quivering slightly. "And I've never seen anything like what happened today. But watching your daughter, and you. I just want to say thank you. For standing up. For showing us what grace looks like." Sophia's cheeks warmed, but she nodded graciously. "Thank you for saying that." A murmur of agreement rippled through the boutique. It was subtle, almost reverent. The kind of acknowledgement that doesn't come from pity or guilt, but from respect. One by one, customers came forward, not to gawk or console, but to offer kind words. A young mother with a stroller whispered, "My daughter needs women like you to look up to." A businessman nodded silently before tipping an imaginary hat. Even a teenage girl, clearly shaken, said softly, "You're the reason I want to speak up more." Olivia approached too, standing beside Sophia. "Miss Carter," she said, carefully. "If you're still willing, I'd be honored to help you complete your purchase today." Sophia looked to her father, who gave a small nod. "All right," she said with quiet confidence. "Let's do it." The two of them walked toward the register. Olivia, still humbled, moved with care. Sophia followed, her posture poised, her every step echoing not just on the marble but through the minds of everyone who'd watched her rise. As the transaction processed, Ethan leaned on the counter beside his daughter. "You sure you want this one?" he asked, teasing. Sophia smirked. "Oh, I'm sure." He grinned. Then it's yours. As Olivia carefully bagged the dress and folded tissue around it like wrapping royalty, she offered it back with both hands and a quiet, "Thank you. For your patience. And your courage." Sophia accepted the bag with a smile. "You're welcome." It wasn't just a purchase. It was a reclaiming. And as she walked toward the boutique's exit, flanked by her father, the store fell silent once more, not out of tension, but respect. A girl had walked in. A woman walked out. The soft chime of the boutique door rang again, this time not in dismissal or judgment, but in quiet triumph. Sophia stepped outside, the glossy black shopping bag in one hand, her father beside her like an anchor in a sea she had just conquered. The late afternoon sun spilled across the pavement, catching the shimmer of the boutique's name etched in gold across the glass, Carter and Company. Most had never connected the name to a real person, certainly not to the girl who had just been humiliated inside. But now they'd never forget it. Ethan glanced down at his daughter. "You want to head home or walk a bit?" he asked. Sophia looked around at the crowded mall, at the people who had stared, then stood still, then stayed silent. "Let's walk," she said. "Let them see us." So they did. Together, they strolled through the mall's wide hallways, passing store after store. People whispered. Some tried to look away and failed. Others gave subtle nods. One man, standing by a fountain, gave Ethan a thumbs up. A woman at a jewelry counter gently clapped when she saw Sophia walk by, then quickly wiped her eyes. There was no gloating from Sophia. No smugness. She didn't need it. Dignity doesn't gloat, it stands still and lets the world adjust around it. They passed a group of girls around her age huddled near the food court. One of them, white, blonde, wearing the same uniform of affluence that Brenda had flaunted, broke away from her group and hurried up to Sophia. "Hey," she said, a little breathless. "I saw everything in the store. I just wanted to say, you were amazing. That woman, she does that kind of thing all the time. To anyone she doesn't think fits." Sophia tilted her head. "You know her." "She's my mom," the girl said quietly. Ethan's brows lifted, but he stayed silent. The girl went on, voice trembling. "I don't agree with her. I've been embarrassed by her for years, but today, what you did. I've never seen anyone stand up to her like that. Not even my dad." Sophia blinked, surprised, but not cruel. "That must be really hard." The girl nodded quickly. "I just wanted you to know. I'm going to remember what you did. I want to be better than her." Sophia gave her a small smile, her voice soft. "Then you already are." The girl blinked, tears welling, and hurried back to her friends. Ethan watched his daughter carefully as they continued walking. "You didn't have to be kind to her." "I wasn't doing it for her," Sophia replied. "I was doing it for me. And for you. And for every girl who looks like me and walks into a place like that thinking she has to shrink to fit." He stopped in the middle of the hallway, just as the sunlight from the atrium skylight touched the top of her head. "Sophia," he said gently, "I know today wasn't fair. I know it hurt. But I want you to know, I've never been prouder." Sophia smiled at him, the kind of smile that came from knowing she had been forged in fire and had come out whole. Then she looked ahead again, toward the long stretch of the mall, where more eyes were waiting to see how the story would end. And she kept walking. Not away. But forward. That evening, in the quiet warmth of their home overlooking the city skyline, Sophia stood in front of her full-length mirror once again, this time in her own room, the emerald dress draped lovingly over her shoulders. It fit perfectly. But more than that, it meant something now. It was no longer just a beautiful piece of fabric, it was a symbol of grace under pressure, of quiet resistance, of the moment she refused to be diminished. Ethan stood by her door, leaning against the frame, arms folded. He didn't say anything at first. He just watched his daughter, the same girl he used to carry on his shoulders, now standing taller than most adults ever could. "Are you nervous about the gala?" he finally asked. Sophia smirked slightly at her reflection. "About the dress? No. About all the stares it'll get? Maybe a little. They'll stare for a different reason now," he said. "Not because they doubt you, but because they admire you." She turned to face him. "Do you think it'll really make a difference? What happened today?" He stepped into the room, walking over to her slowly. "For some people, probably not. But for others? Yes. For the woman who apologized. For the girl who wants to be better than her mom. For the customers who saw it with their own eyes. And most of all, for you." Sophia nodded, her gaze thoughtful. "I used to think people like Brenda were rare. But I realize now, they're not. They just get quieter when they're exposed." Ethan smiled grimly. "Prejudice hides best when no one challenges it." She looked up at him. "I didn't challenge her because I wanted a scene. I just didn't want to disappear." He stepped forward and gently placed his hands on her shoulders. "You didn't disappear, Sophia. You became undeniable." As the sun dipped below the city skyline and the gala's start time drew closer, Sophia placed the dress back on its hanger with reverence. It would shine tonight, but not as brightly as the woman wearing it. Later that evening, as she and Ethan arrived at the grand ballroom, all eyes turned as expected. The floor-length emerald gown shimmered under the chandeliers, but it was Sophia's poise that caught the room's attention. She didn't carry herself like someone who had been through a storm, she moved like the storm had prepared her for everything else. Whispers followed her. So did respect. Some recognized her from the boutique incident, which had already begun circulating on social media thanks to an anonymous shopper who'd quietly recorded Brenda's outburst. The video, simply titled, "She Picked the Wrong Girl," had gone viral within hours. At the gala, Sophia shook hands with city leaders, tech moguls, and journalists. She posed for a photo with a group of young girls brought in from a scholarship foundation her father had funded. They looked up at her with wide, awestruck eyes. "You're the girl from the video," one of them whispered. Sophia knelt down, smiling. "I am. And one day, they'll be talking about you." By the end of the night, it wasn't the gown people remembered, it was the grace. The courage. The composure under fire. It was the story of a teenage girl who walked into a boutique and walked out a symbol of quiet defiance. What happened to Sophia Carter wasn't just about one boutique, one woman, or one incident. It was about a culture that too often judges worth by the surface, and a young woman who refused to let that judgment define her. When dignity meets ignorance, let it be dignity that stands taller. As Sophia's father said best, "Respect is not conditional. It is owed." If this story moved you, don't let it stop here. Share it. Start conversations. Stand beside someone who needs a voice, and never be afraid to use your own. Subscribe to True Echo for more real, powerful stories that echo long after the screen fades. Turn on notifications so you never miss a voice that deserves to be heard.